Okay, let's talk about a feeling that's, well, not really a feeling at all. It's that strange sense of just nothing. That feeling of moving through life in a fog. We're going to dive into what that's all about, why it happens, and most importantly, how we can start to feel again. You know what I'm talking about, right? That feeling of just being blah. It's this super common but really confusing state, this emotional fog. You're not sad, not really, but you are a million miles away from happy. You can get through your day, sure, but that spark, that little bit of joy, it's just gone. A lot of people describe it as watching your own life from a distance, like you're behind a glass wall. You see things happening, but you don't really feel them. Connecting with people you love feels like a chore, and hobbies you used to get excited about, they just don't hit the same. It's not that you're in pain, it's the total absence of feeling that's so unsettling.
So first things first, let's actually give this experience a name, because you can't really start to deal with something if you don't know what it is, right? And what's interesting is that this sense of emptiness can actually show up in a couple of different but related ways.
All right, so let's break this down. On one side, you have emotional numbness. Think of this as your brain's emergency brake. After something really stressful or traumatic, your brain can just flip a switch to protect you from overload. On the other side, there's this thing called languishing. This is less of an emergency shutdown and more of a void. It's the absence of feeling good. It's the official term for feeling.
There's this psychologist, Corey Keyes, who came up with a really helpful way to see it. He said mental health isn't just good or bad, it's a whole spectrum. And languishing, it's like the neglected middle child stuck right between depression on one end and flourishing or thriving on the other. You're not in crisis, but man, you are definitely not living your best life. You're just stuck.
And listen, this is super important. While languishing isn't depression itself, it is a major red flag. Seriously, research shows that people in that languishing state have a 117% higher risk of developing major depression down the line. So it's basically your mind sending up a flare saying, hey, we need to pay attention here before we slide further down this spectrum.
So, the big question is, how do we get stuck in this place? Well, it usually comes down to two really sneaky psychological traps that kind of feed off each other. One messes with our day-to-day lives, and the other messes with our big life goals.
Let's talk about routines. We love them, right? They're comfortable, they make life easier, but here's the catch. When our routines get too rigid, they stop being helpful and start becoming a cage. We slip into autopilot, and suddenly, we're not really living our lives anymore, we're just going through the motions. And that's exactly where that numb, stagnant feeling loves to creep.
At the same exact time, we fall for this other trap, something called the arrival fallacy. You definitely know this one. It's that little voice in your head that says, I'll be happy when, when I get the promotion or when I buy the house. We're basically putting our happiness on hold, pinning all our hopes on some future finish line.
And you can see how this creates a really frustrating loop. You grind and you grind thinking this one thing is the magic ticket to happiness. You get there, and for a minute, it feels great. But then, poof, the feeling's gone. You're right back where you started, feeling empty. So what do? You just find a new, even bigger goal and hop right back on the hamster wheel.
But here's the good news. You are not doomed to stay on that hamster wheel forever. So, how do we get off? Let's get into the practical stuff. We're talking a toolkit for actually starting to feel again, and it's a mix of changing how you think and things you can actually do.
First up is a big mindset shift, reconnecting with your why. Instead of just chasing goals because you think you're supposed to, ask yourself what truly matters to you. When your goals actually line up with your personal values, the journey itself starts to feel meaningful, not just the finish line.
Okay, next up, actively shift your focus from that future destination to the daily journey. I know it sounds a little cliche, but it works. Find joy in the small steps. Celebrate the tiny wins. Practicing gratitude for what you already have anchors you in the now and stops you from always kicking your happiness down the road. That feeling of numbness is really a disconnect between your mind and your body. And our emotions, they live in our bodies. So one of the best ways to rebuild that bridge is to, get back into your body. We're talking simple stuff. Go for a walk, do some stretching, just focus on your breath for a minute. The point isn't to force yourself to feel something, but to create a safe space for your feelings to show up again.
And finally, you have got to consciously break that autopilot mode. This doesn't mean you have to upend your whole life. I'm serious. Just try taking a different route to work. Try a new recipe. These tiny changes act like a little jolt to your brain. They introduce something new, pull you out of the rut, and get you engaged with the world again.
So when you put all these tools together, they're all pointing toward one central, really transformative idea. And honestly, this might be the most important takeaway of this whole thing for how we approach our lives. Look, the solution isn't to stop having goals. Of course not. Goals give us direction, they give us purpose. The key is to stop outsourcing your happiness to them. It's about finding fulfillment in the process, in the daily act of trying and learning and connecting. That's where the good stuff is.
Truly getting this could be the single most important step you take toward building a life you feel excited to live, starting today. Because a fulfilling life isn't found at some distant finish line. It's built one present, intentional moment at a time.